Evening, bro. Good evening. Good evening. How am I sounding? Is the connection okay? Is the connection okay? Am I good? Just let me know in the comments, please. Is the connection okay? Let me know, let me know, let me know. Tendai, can you hear me? Is the connection okay? Just let me know in the comments, please. I'm going to introduce you in a second, but let me know if you can hear me okay. Is the connection all right? All right, I'm just going to assume the connection is okay. You can't hear me. Is the connection okay now? Can you hear me now? Let me know in the comments. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Am I coming through okay? Can you hear me? Let me know in the comments if you can hear me. If not, I'm going to have to restart this live. You can hear me. Thanks, sis. Wonderful. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, 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 everybody. So here I am again for another Let's Talk with Natisha. And today I've got an amazing guest. His name is Tendai, and because I'm just gonna introduce him and bring him on, and we're gonna get straight into this conversation. As you know, this is a platform to inspire, to empower, to encourage other people, each other. You know, we share nuggets, we share words of wisdom, experience. It's a real honest space. Okay, it's a space that we can just, you know, chime in with your comments in the chat. You know, just really interactive. So my special guest tonight is a good friend of mine, a brother, a brother of mine. His name is Tendai Horton, and Tendai is a mental health advocate. He has his own platform, which is Mental. I hope that Mental Talk. I hope I've got that correct. Anyway, if I haven't, he will come on and correct me. And he tries to do the same thing as encouraging men to get talking. Oh, great. You can hear me now. Praise God. So, you know, his platform is to encourage men in particular to get talking about some issues, opening up, you know. It's easy. Women, we'd like to talk, but sometimes men find it quite difficult, you know. So I salute my brother because he has this platform, and it's, you know, and he gives opportunities to talk about all different topics from a male's perspective. So I'm going to bring him on. All right. I'm not even going to waste no time. I'm going to bring him on. I'm going to request him into the room. And, you know, today's topic, we're looking at identity. All right, we're going to focus on identity and how our identity can shape our future. All right, how does our identity shape our future? So we're going to peel off the layers. We're just going to get into that for a bit for the next hour. Feel free to join us in the comments. Feel free to you know, drop some questions for Tendai, and I will do my best to raise those questions towards the end of our conversation. Right, but yeah, let's do this. You know, we're all about life. It's all about learning. It's all about exploring. It's all about, you know, sharing of experiences and wisdom and knowledge and all that great stuff. So Tendai, where are you, bro? I have clicked for you to join me. I'm going to send another request. I'm going to send another request because I'm ready for you to jump on. Where are you? Let's see. Thank you, everyone. I hope he's able to connect. Are you here?
I'm here now.
Yes!
Praise the Lord.
Praise God!
Oh gosh, it feels like it's really close there. Let me just move it back a bit. Yeah,
Yeah, that happens. I feel like that every time I join a live. Suddenly I'm like zoomed in. You can see me big and no. It's okay. Let's sit
yeah.
back.
I don't
Let's
want people to see my foot. I've got a big forehead, so
you and me
let me
both,
move
bro.
back a
So,
bit.
do you know what I mean? It would be quite entertaining for anybody who's watching. So just take your time, just adjust yourself, and get comfortable. And yes, everybody. So today, this is Tendai Horton. All right. He is, showing some love, get the hearts going, get your questions ready. We're talking about identity. All right. Identity. And we're just gonna strip that down a little bit and, just get a bit deeper with that and what that looks like for him, for me, and for anyone else in the comment. If you've got, your contributions, please chime in because that's what it's about. All right, it's about let's talk. Let's talk. This is a platform for us to talk. All right, it's a safe space. So we just
Love
keep
that.
sharing. Yeah, we just keep sharing. So, my brother, all right,
Hello.
if I'm looking down a bit because I'm trying to be all professional here. Like I've got
Nah,
my little
hey, do your thing. Do your thing. I'm gonna try and do my thing, but yeah, see how it goes.
Oh, I just want to, yes, give me a second. Thank you, everyone who's joined so far. First of all, I must salute my sister, Mrs. Horton, on here. Bless you, sis. Welcome.
Oh gosh, now I'm in trouble. Now I have to watch what I say now. Oh gosh, pressure's on.
I should have kept it quiet, just let you know.
Well, I think she's gonna go to bed soon, so
Well, I'm sure she wants to hear what you got to say first. So, you
yeah.
know, bless you, sis, for being here. Petula, Sabrina, I see you. Bless you all. Cynthia, Shaq, I bless you. Thank you, everybody who is on already, nice and early. Queen Africa, listen, you're all online. Bless you.
Thank you,
So
guys.
thank you. Share if you want to, if we as we're talking, as we're going along, if it kind of rings a bell and there's somebody else you think that can benefit from this conversation, just share the live. All right, just share the live because you don't know who you could be blessing through this live tonight. So we're gonna look at identity. It means a lot of things, but
Oh
we're
gosh,
gonna, do you know what I mean? It's a
yeah. We're gonna try
big,
and unpackage it. That's what we're gonna try and do.
we're going to try and we recognize that it is different. What my interpretation of that is going to be different from Tendai's. Likewise, anyone else who's watching it is going to be different because it's really a personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a personal thing. But there might be something that, there might be some common stuff, some common themes, threads, around that. And we're hoping to kind of, when we have this conversation today, we probably will find that there are some common things and some overlaps and, maybe some truths in some stuff as well. Who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah,
Who knows?
100%.
So, yeah. So identity, what is it? What does it mean to you? What
Yeah,
does
I
it
think
mean
it's,
to
you know what, it is just one of those things that like we do almost on a daily basis, but probably we don't
you?
think about it too much. It's just something that distinguishes us from each other. So whether it be our character, our personality, our ethnicity, just where we come from, what we represent. And I think people have different ways that they view it. Some view it more than others, some less than others. And for some people, it's more of a, how should I say, an ever-present reality
Yeah.
in terms of the experiences that people go through. You know,
I like that
yeah,
in terms of that.
yeah,
their experiences, their ever present experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I guess what I mean by that is that not to dive in too much into what we're going to be talking about, but it's just it's something that we notice every day. It's like, I'm black, somebody might be Chinese, somebody might be Irish, somebody might be English.
Yeah.
And some people just go about their daily basis either thinking about their identity or not thinking about their identity because the certain environments that we're in are probably more conducive to certain identities.
Mm.
So it's something that we have to sort of navigate through
Yeah.
through daily. So it's more than just a tick box on an application form, or you know uh, when you're asked to fill in a piece of form, it says, "Oh, what do you identify as?" It's all those things. So it's something that's become more prevalent for obvious reasons, recent world events and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just thought it'd be really cool to sort of try and unpackage that.
Right. So let's get into that. So, where is your background? Tell us a little bit about, where you're from and were you born here or where did you grow
Yeah.
up and
So so
identity? Yeah.
yeah. So I guess I was born here. My mum is from Zimbabwe.
Okay.
My dad's from the Caribbean. Well, he's from the West Indies, which is typically a South American country, but it's got Caribbean influences, being on the tip of South America. Uh,
Okay.
grew up grew up mainly in Zimbabwe, and then obviously here. So I've kind of spent half and half there, but I haven't been to the Caribbean as such because my relationship with my family has been strong on my mother's side than it is on my dad's side. And part of me
Okay.
still wants to experience that Caribbean side.
Yes,
Not that I don't experience it here, because obviously living in England, pretty much wherever you are, and also London, there's big Caribbean communities.
of course.
So
Yeah.
I've been able to experience some of my Caribbean side, but not enough. But
Yeah.
then when it comes to identity, it's something that's still a part of me, even though I don't feel necessarily really connected to it. So if
Mm.
somebody were to ask me, like, what's your identity? I mean, obviously people say I'm black, but
Yes. Yeah.
if they probed a bit more, then obviously I will tell them a bit more about what I've just shared.
Yeah.
So then it gets deeper, and
Mm.
I feel that the experiences that I have as a person that lives in the UK, though that kind of background has a bearing on my identity, and ultimately in how I portray myself and how I feel, I
Yeah.
should portray myself to other people.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I and it's really key actually to know where one is coming from, I guess, because it's almost like, you know, um, it's like a puzzle, right? When you've got a 50-piece puzzle, but then you've only got 47 pieces, you are looking for the other three pieces. That puzzle's kind of not complete until you've got the other three, isn't it? So
yeah,
there's this everlasting kind of need searching to
yeah,
connect, to find those pieces of yourself,
yeah,
um, to
yeah,
make the bigger picture.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's something for me that I haven't really. It's only something that I've started recently. I say recently, but maybe in the last sort of, I guess, 5 to 8 years, something like that. Started to delve more into as I've gotten older, because I've been married 10 years now, or 11 years. Gosh, I hope she's not listening. Uh, I think it's
Okay,
10. No, it's 11. And and as somebody that's a father as well, so it's something that as my daughter gets older, it's something that I do think about more.
right.
And obviously because of recent world events, it's
Mm.
just something that has um, I feel like something that's really um, not weighing on my heart, but it sits on my heart. Uh,
Mm.
you know, with so many different questions. So yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
I hear that as a parent as well, like, the sowing the seeds, letting, helping, children to understand where they're coming from. One day, obviously, they're going to grow up and they're going to have their own children, and it's about like sowing the seed for them to even sow the seeds. They can only sow what they know.
Yeah,
We can only sow what we know. right?
Yeah.
So when information is when we don't have information for whatever reason, whether it's been there's a lack of information because it wasn't shared, passed down to us from our parents, or for whatever reason, but there's definitely something in that in terms of the cycle and the breaking of how development, how we grow,
Yeah.
and then how we perceive, the world in front of us, our future, and those things.
Yeah.
You can see
Yeah.
some
100%.
comments coming up, so I'm going to acknowledge those in a second. Please, please, please continue to keep just dropping your comments in, and questions. We'll come back to those in a second. But yeah, it's definitely important because it's like, a tree. A tree has the roots for a reason. Oh yes, that's what somebody's just saying now as well. Actually, let me just acknowledge that statement. Marcus Garvey said, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, culture, and culture is like a tree without roots." There you
Yeah.
go. Absolutely, it is just that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How can you be grounded to an extent, really grounded, feet in, if you don't have the fullness of who
Yeah.
you are. and
Yeah.
and we need to have that both on every level, not just on a physical level on the outside. It's a spiritual, it's holistically, because we are in our skin. No matter where we go, we can't change
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We cannot
Yeah.
change it. Go on.
And just acknowledging what Queenie, I think it's Queenie Africa that's just said that. Yeah, thanks very much for that. I think that's a really
Powerful.
good point because yeah, it's going to be one of my next points. So in terms of being a father, so I don't live in a multicultural city at the moment. I used to live in London, so obviously where we live now, it's not as multicultural. So having a young, a 6-year-old black girl who goes to a school uh, that's not where she's not massively represented. Let me say that it was something that me and my wife sort of early on had to sort of. I mean, we didn't have any long conversations about it, but it was important to us to make sure that she knew who she was.
Yes.
And I can say that confidently because I think it's one of our most important pillars between me and my wife, something that we agree on specifically. We're not like, pro anything or anything like that, but it's just, our families obviously, from a African and Caribbean culture. So we make it a thing to always bring her back to that so she knows where she
Yeah.
comes from. So whilst, she obviously goes through the curriculum at school, we made a conscious decision in terms of trying to make sure that she knows who she is and where she comes from. So whether that was, buying books by certain authors. So when she's home, thank God she likes reading. So we buy all these different books. Well, one of the books that she really liked when she first started reading was I can't remember the title of it, but it's called, I think, something Curly Sue, and it's a young black girl that's
Mm-hmm.
got really massive afro. It's probably not curly. I can't remember what it is. I think it is Curly Sue, but she's got an afro anyway,
Yeah.
or at least like an afro that's curly. And he talks about how she combs her hair,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes right down into the detail about how mummy pulls her hair and sometimes it hurts, and it's explaining to her why she's like that. So she's not going to school and then she's saying to herself, well, why am I like this and why am I not like that? Because I've got friends actually who live close to me who have had the same experiences, and they've kind of shared like how emotional that made them feel
Yeah.
when a child came back from school and she was saying like, oh mommy, how come they don't look like me and all that kind of stuff. And for us, that's why identity was so important. And we were able to go back to Zimbabwe I think a couple of years ago, and we were able to get certain things. It was just an experience for all of us as family. And even now when she goes to school, she's got a backpack that's got it's a really nice design of a backpack. It's a backpack with a black girl with like curly hair on
Love
it,
it.
and
I
it's
love it.
made with like real braids, and the braids are
Oh,
almost falling off the bag. So it's almost like a interactive. I mean, it's like a 2D bag, if you can call it a 2D,
oh,
3D. Maybe not quite 3D, but yeah.
I can picture.
So yeah. So for me, that's why I think as a father, because I think that's something that's really important for me, because like not really had that relationship, that close relationship with my father, it was important for me to have a close relationship with my daughter. So that it's
Yes.
important that she understands who she is and where she comes
Yes.
from. Because the
Love
best
that.
thing for me to do is to equip her. And I know we're
Yes.
kind of talking about, race a little bit, but that is our identity. So I
Yes.
can only talk from my perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for people, whether they're Irish or Scottish or American or Chinese, whatever it is. Identity is it's something that we see every day. So I think it for me it was just something that really dropped in my heart sort of a few months ago, and it was just something that was just like, wow, identity has never been so important, especially now
Mm,
with everything that we're going through.
mm, mm, mm.
You know,
You, I mean, I could even I love that. I love that, and I think again it's about we're talking about the seeds that you're sowing. You see, where she gets older, you're gonna see the harvest of all these seeds that you're sowing into her now, about her identity, especially from I can say that as a woman is important, and this is equally important for young men as well, boys.
mm,
Children need to know who they are because they go through the school system. They are faced with things. They're
yep,
faced with many challenges. Sometimes they come home and tell you about it. Sometimes they don't, and
yeah,
all we can do as parents is equip our children. I spent a lot of time doing that with my own, equipping him so that he knows who he is, that he's grounded. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
There's no
mm,
question. And actually, when he got to a particular age, he started even digging deeper himself in terms of his history, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And that's what it's about, being, because as I said, it's about being comfortable. You can't run from ourselves. You
no,
have to get to a place where you're comfortable within yourself, that you are happy within yourself, you're at peace within yourself, that you're loving yourself, not just liking yourself, but you're loving yourself. You
yeah,
understand?
100%, 100%,
Understanding that you were created and made this way for a purpose. You
mm,
understand? And even that, everything is tied into, you see, because once if you flip the coin, if you are not any of that, you're unable to be as powerful, you're unable to show up, the way that you're supposed to show up, and be who you're supposed to be,
true,
because you haven't dealt with this very key thing, which is your identity.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's
100%,
so important to do the work,
yeah,
and it is a responsibility as a parent to do that.
yeah,
It really
and I
is.
think yeah, and I think now that we are I use the word bombarded with a lot of messages,
Mm,
a lot of ideals, systems,
mm, mm,
um, just way of thinking. And
mm.
if you don't really know your identity, if you're not in tune with your identity, you can slip down um, a very different path.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that to kind of a scaremonger or anything like that, but it's
Mhm.
I mean one would argue that and this maybe this might be a little bit controversial, is that as black people we're probably one of the um, most sensitive people, or most in terms of realizing what situation we are in, if that makes sense, based on our race. And I guess what I mean by that is that just with recent things that have gone past, like obviously things like the George Floyd, and just also recent things that have come to light, sort of like what's happening in Ukraine and stuff like that. I don't want to get too political because it's just not the place for it. But we tend to sort of acclimatize more with our experiences. Let me say it that way, because then sometimes when you try and show people or share about your experiences to people that don't look like yourself, sometimes it can be a bit hard for them to grasp your experience, if that makes sense. So just going back in terms of like just the sort of things that we have to navigate in terms of our identity. I think it's just really important,
Mm-mm.
personally. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously with the lockdown, that's
Mm,
really that did a lot in terms of highlighting um well, especially as you said, the George Floyd highlighted culture, identity,
yeah.
us as a people on a next level.
Yeah.
And I have seen, obviously that drive to teach and to know, to understand, to grow,
Yeah.
all around identity. I've seen that on so many different levels, and uh, people have been establishing various different projects or services or groups or forums and so on because of
Yeah.
that. And even and there's been a huge shift even in the school education. There's an acknowledgement that's had to take place
Yeah.
because of that through. So it's a really powerful thing. It just goes to show you how powerful identity is on a whole. um
100%.
and I just want to um uh, you know, it is about, there's a comment here, it's your younger generation, it's the younger generation that we need to support even more. So at this time, the parent is the first teacher they should have. Absolutely. And I totally agree. It's got to start from the home. I just want to go back to that in sense of your lockdown and experiences throughout lockdown for you, in the sense of um, as you mentioned, being a parent and your little one at school, and the bag and things that you felt that you needed to do implement
Mm.
into her life. Um, was there any direct challenges that you found within lockdown, um, as a father, as a man, a
Yeah.
black man,
Yeah.
around the identity that you want
Yeah.
to?
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, lockdown was tough, wasn't it?
Mm.
Gosh, the first lockdown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember the first lockdown was really, really tough. So obviously my wife, working in the NHS, meant that, she had to go out. So it was just kind of trying to, thinking about her, and then obviously doing the homeschooling.
Hmm.
And I have to give a shout out to my employers because they were totally understanding, and I'm sure a lot of other employers, generally a lot of employers were understanding, from what I hear anyway, because a lot of people just had to do that homeschooling and they had to work at the same time.
Yes.
And if you had a partner that worked, in the, what do they call it? Key workers, then
Yeah.
it was a struggle because you had one person
Mhm.
at home doing
Yeah,
everything.
that's right.
So yeah, so for me, I think the first part of that was just trying to adapt. Because I remember we'd just come back from Zimbabwe. Actually, we cut our trip to Zimbabwe short
Oh,
because obviously
yes.
we had to get back. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to, to get in the country, let alone get a flight. So, it was tough, but in terms of the homeschooling, I think that just went on, and without thinking too much about, sort of like the experiences, uh, in terms of our own identity, probably wasn't that much of a big issue at that time because she was in school and it was just the two of us. So I think maybe the main thing for me was that she was missing out on school. So it was like the experiences probably she would have had at that time, being a young black um, girl going into school at that time. I just wonder maybe how that experience would have been. But I think fast forward to when obviously lockdown kind of eased and they opened the school, it was just kind of like, yeah, it was all about just rushing back into school. So there wasn't really any time to think about anything. It was just like, oh gosh, we're just happy the schools are open,
Yeah.
and then they could go back in. So for me, it was just kind of like, from the identity side of things, it was kind of good to have her at home because you weren't thinking about, the perceptions. Um, of certain things, whether it's her on the environment of her or the others in the school or the teachers on her, because I think in her class, I think there's only two other girls that are from a mixed background, and then the rest of the class is pretty much white. But I have to say that the school, from what we've seen so far, is really really good. Um, and I know that they did stuff like Black History and stuff like that. So yeah, but from a lockdown perspective, I think it was okay because I had her at home, so the struggle there was more about just kind of trying to make sure that I was trying to educate her based on what the school provided as much as I can. So there wasn't too much to delve into in terms of identity. Obviously, she still had her books, which she always reread and stuff like that. But I guess what I should say is that the consumption as far as what she watched obviously was also a bit of a concern. Well, I say a concern, but because most of us that have kids can probably share. It's just like the stuff that the kids consume on tablets and devices and all that kind of. They watch all kinds of different stuff. So she would watch something and then she'll come and then she'll act out certain things. So it's difficult. It was difficult to kind of obviously police that while she's at home because it's more of an everyday thing. But yeah, I think lockdown wasn't that much of an issue. To be honest with you, it was more about when she went out. So for us, it's just every day, just trying to, not explain to her why she is the way she is, but it's just trying to make her feel comfortable in who she is. So when she has certain questions, we can tell her, why. So yeah, so it's a tricky one.
And so, like, did you find it easy? Like, obviously, you had, your friends and family, or peers, work colleagues, and stuff like that, people around you. And how did you find? How did you find that? Were you able to kind of speak to them? Did you find people was opening up to you, or were you able to? Were you?
Yeah.
No, I want to kind of know
that's
how.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you really? Because I know, like, for me, around lockdown time, I went through stages in terms of the opening up and talking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Initially, I wasn't doing the opening up and talking. It was more of a shutdown.
Yeah.
And then the George Floyd thing came, and it was like, right, need to talk.
Yeah.
And actually,
I mean, it was. Yeah,
yeah.
it was weird because there was this sense of just kind of like get on with it. But maybe that was just me because it was like, I still had work to do. So it was like I didn't have, it's going to sound strange, but it's almost like I didn't have time to think about all the things that were happening. Like my job still had to go on. So, I mean, I had a really supportive manager, or I have a really supportive manager, and I think the culture of our organization is very understanding. It's about, we have to, if you're not in an environment where you can work or you can produce, then we need to work with you to try and help you do that. So it's like you need a bit of time off, or if you can't work between the hours of, say, I don't know, 8 and 11, say, for example, we were happy to, or with my work, we're happy to have a conversation around, okay, well, maybe you can start later, or you can, or as long as the work is done, we're not going to give you a hard time about it. So for me, I think one of the issues, and it's funny, being from, coming from my platform, which is mental talk, which is all about, so I've got a thing on my profile. So it's men, and then it's dash toe. So it's men, and then it's toe. So it's men, but it's also mental. So it's trying to link the two together. So men and the mental. Yeah. So it's, the challenge has always been like, yeah, I mean, men sometimes we do struggle to communicate. And that's probably, in a way, kind of a deterrent or a hurdle in terms of our identity, because coming from where we're from and our background and the challenges that we have to go through as men that are not necessarily openly emotional, it can be a hard thing, because I've got friends, but to say whether I was really in contact with them throughout the process and talking to them about some of the challenges, and even just saying, bro, I'm going through this, are you going through the same thing, how are you feeling about being at home, or your kids not in school, and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say those kind of conversations went on. In fact, I'd probably say a lot of the conversations, it's just like some of the guys just didn't really talk to, you know, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because people were just getting on with their work, possibly.
Well,
Um,
this is what I was trying to understand, because when you were saying about the taking care of things with your daughter and
yeah,
work, and having a really supportive manager, and just kind of, I asked the question about, in terms of, your peers, family, friends, and conversations around that, and there was it was clear that you're focused on work.
yeah,
So it had me thinking, is that because I know that you've got your platform also about men
mm,
and talking.
mm,
And I think, well, sometimes we could be so focused, but the focus is more of a distraction, so that we're not having to address the very issues that are in front of us.
yeah, yeah,
And you do that as people. I think I guess men seem to do that. That's a way of men managing
yeah,
their well-being, then, if I could say that,
yeah,
well-being, or
yeah,
managing their navigating through life. I'm intrigued because I know that your platform started up around lockdown time. So,
yeah, 100%.
I'm more intrigued, like, how did you get from there, from being you just doing your bits at home and stuff, to actually creating the platform where actually men needs to talk?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think
what's
what's
the
helped me is my wife, basically. Uh, you know, because not only is she my best friend, but you know, I can talk to her, and it's weird because when I talked to her about starting this channel about mental talk, she was like, "Yes, 100% do it because you guys don't talk." Uh, so for me, it was just like,
you always
okay,
hear
how
a
do I?
voice saying
Yeah.
it.
So for me, it was like, okay, gosh, okay, now how do I then push it? Because the
Yeah,
vision that I had was to get other men to come on and talk. So naturally, what I did was look within my own circles.
yeah.
And unfortunately, not a lot of my people in my own circle were forthcoming.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, I actually shared my idea, I shared my platform with a few of the guys. Um, and there wasn't really that much acknowledgement, and that might shock some people watching this, because they'd be
Interesting.
like, "Well, really? Because you're doing something." I thought they would, you know, agree that men don't necessarily talk. And then I remember I had one of my friends I used to go to school with, who now lives in Finland, and he had certain views in terms of, I think what he said was, I'm trying to remember what he said about, you know, generally when I asked him the same question, he said something about men being misunderstood. And then
Okay.
I was okay, and I think he was right. I can't
Mm.
remember the full statement that he made, because I asked him a question, and that's part of what he said. And I remember trying to grapple with that, because I was just like, I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe we're misunderstood because we don't talk much. Um, you know, so and more importantly, when it comes to identity, it's just like, well, how are we going to identify with ourselves and as a group of friends that are the same if we don't talk about some of the things that we go through? Because
Mm.
we need to learn to you know, not just internalize that. And
Be
you know,
vulnerable as
men,
well. Be
yeah, and you know,
vulnerable.
men and
Mm.
women are different. Men and women are
Mm.
different. There's no doubt about that. And some of that difference stems from how we're brought up, in terms of men are supposed to fit a specific criteria. Um, and I guess maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, but just going back to the conversation with me and my wife. So once we had that conversation, for me now, the challenge was to try and push content out there that would encourage people to talk. Uh, and it was still difficult. I had some people, to be honest with you, I had more interest from people outside my close circle of friends, which was also interesting, because people were like,
That's
yes, 100% do it. Yes, 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 yes. But at the same time, they would also not necessarily share their stories. So I was
mm.
like, okay, so you want me to talk about this stuff, but you're not willing to engage. So I kind
It's
of just
almost like
had to
a privilege
rethink.
at home, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of just had to rethink, you know, how I do it. So I think I'm getting to a stage now where, you know, where we're starting to have certain conversations, and I'm just playing a part where I basically draw from other men's experiences and
Mm.
try and create, content that talks, um, and yeah, and just encourages other people to say, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying because I've been through it. But it's still a lot of work, and it's a lot of work because a lot of people, a lot of guys, based on what they identify with being as a man,
Mm.
feel like possibly they wouldn't share certain things.
I just had a
So it's
question, Tendai, that it's a bit random, but it's just, I'm gonna ask it anyway.
yeah.
Is there anything that do you think from a man's from a male's perspective, is there anything do you think is there anything do you think is there anything that us as women could do to help with to move that move that forward, to move those kind of conversations forward?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I do feel that uh, from the women that I know, um, and I guess the women that I know obviously are the women connected to my wife. Those are the only women I would know. um, you know, but I just want to make that clear because it's just like, huh?
Yes.
What other women are you talking to? Um,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
them.
I mean, I see a lot of really strong women that are looking after young men, young boys, um, and they're doing a cracking job. So I feel like there's influence from some of the women that I'm seeing from our family, or the women that are connected to our family. But I think it's just encouragement. I just think that just women just have to keep encouraging men to talk. Um, because it is difficult for men. There's a lot of pressure on men, as much as probably it's not seen,
Mhm.
because normally we're seen as like, yeah, you're men, you're strong, so get on
Mm.
with it. And we do get on with it, but to a certain extent, um, we're dealing with things internally, and we don't know
Yeah.
how to bring it out. And I think
Mm.
the women in the guys' lives need to just keep on encouraging them, and try and encourage them more, or even just try and have a conversation about, like, what do they struggle with and why do you feel that you're struggling with. So say, for example, one of the things that my wife says to me, especially around the issues of identity, because it's something that's we don't necessarily talk about it as a topic, but the conversations that we have, whether
Yeah.
it's about where we should live, where we should move to, where we should move up. So if we're planning to move somewhere, we have to think about schools. Is it
Mm.
multicultural? Is it not multicultural? How do we know that her identity is going to be acknowledged and
Yeah.
encouraged to grow? Because as much as we don't like to talk about it, there's certain environments where if you come in, you're from a certain background, you're pushed down.
Mm.
So um, so yeah, so I think for me, those are the most important parts. It's just kind of like just having that conversation with men about, okay, like what's going in your head, and it's finding a way to have those conversations. And I think that's the difficult bit because men
Mm.
naturally we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk
Right.
about that. And I think obviously to the guys that are single, or maybe you're not around many women or some women, um, it might be difficult. But I think uh, trying to be involved in communities where you can have those conversations, where you can speak to people that are of different backgrounds and stuff, and just you know somewhere where you're just able to have that conversation. It's hard. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy, because
You know.
before I got married, I was just used to just sitting at home and just I'd work Monday to Friday, and then I'd come home on a weekend and just watch sport, and would bother going out and talking to anybody. So there's some men that are just whether it's a skill thing, or in terms of communication, or just wanting to go out and speak to other people, or be part of different communities. it's difficult. You know, even though I went to I went to a church, where there were other guys, and you would think like maybe in the church community they talk about things like that, but they weren't. Um, so it's difficult and it's hard. It's hard for men. I mean, it's hard for everybody, but for men, the challenges that I see, um, it's getting difficult because, like I was saying earlier, there are so many messages pushed out, and it's funny because it's an interesting fact. I was listening to BBC Radio 4 this morning. I was doing a school run. I got stuck in traffic on the way back, and they were talking about the choices people make from the moment you get up. On average, we make 35,000 choices a day. So imagine that. So just for something as simple as, waking up, getting out of your bed, you're going to make a cup of coffee, or I'm going to take a shower, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And those, you can look at it at layers and think, okay, the amount of choices that I have to make, the amount of decisions I have to make before I leave my house compared to the decisions I make when I leave my house. One might argue that the ones where you leave your house are a lot more, not dangerous, but they're a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot more riskier than the decisions you make when you're still at home. So I was talking earlier about when I'm at home. I mean, when I was single, I'll stay at home, and now I look back on it, I think it was an easier choice because when you go out, you take less risks in talking to other people, engaging conversations, or doing other things. So the decisions that I make at home, being in my own bubble, from a mental health perspective, and that's where you can start looking at it and think maybe that's not good for me. And that's why people always encourage you to go out, go and get some exercise, go and talk to people and like that. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is just that I thought that was interesting because I was like, oh, I'm going to have this chat later in the evening, and it's true. We make so many decisions per day, and to make the right ones is so much pressure. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I've gone on for a bit there.
It's all right. I'll bring you back.
Yeah, bring me back.
No, it is interesting because, I'm just thinking about identity is a real, it's a huge subject topic, and, we're not going to try and cover it all today in this one live, but we really just kind of wanted to go through how, how does that really shape someone's future? How kind of impact does, our identity have on the direction of our life, the choices, the decisions that we make.
Yeah. Massive.
What we do, those kind of things, who we do it with. It's really, really massive, but, definitely is something that starts from within. That I think it's good because we started with that anyway. We looked at that from you shared your experience, and it is something that we need to recognize from the beginning and from within.
Yeah.
And then outwardly, which you've kind of taken us through that in terms of your relationship as a father, your relationship with your daughter, so relationship as a father, and relationship with others, and then the external issues and the impact that had on your identity and how you sat within life generally, and I think and then kind of and then talking about all of that, because it's all good and well you experiencing something, but then when you're kind of keeping it all to yourself, then that's no good for nobody. It's no good for our mental health. It's no good for our well-being. So it is important to talk about these issues, and I can see where then that would lead you to have a platform such as Mental Talk, kind of get those conversations going. And I know that we've spoken before around, we've had many conversations, discussion around mental health. As you know, I'm a huge mental health advocate, strongly. So, all about well-being, health, and all of that. So it's really, really, so it really kind of, fits in. I will kind of just want to, I'm kind of thinking, going, in terms of our question, which is, yeah, mental health. How does our identity shape our future? You know, from your perspective, what three like nuggets could you give, or would you give, from your experiences?
Yeah, I think one of the main things for me that I've learned is that you've just got to ask many questions and you've got to question everything. Um, and the reason I say that is because earlier I touched on about how society, in a way, is driven, whether it be through society itself or the countries that we live in. Um, Society does control us to a certain extent. And I know that sounds probably a little bit controversial, but it is the truth, because pretty much any society is organized in a certain way for us to make certain decisions. So for me, I just feel like, so, I mentioned earlier about, like where we're going to live, what school you take your kids, what job you go for, where you choose to go on holiday, all those things. If you look at just those things, I wouldn't say we're forced, but we're kind of directed into a certain way. Like, if you can't afford to live London, say for example, that means you've got to stay in London. And London has a particular, it's a multicultural place, but it still has a certain way of driving you. And whilst it's great to be sort of like in a multicultural place, for certain people that say, okay, I want to live London because maybe I want a bit more greenery, I want to maybe try and see if I can send my kid to a different school. All those things are things that are driving you to make specific decisions. And I'm not saying people make decisions without necessarily thinking them through. Of course you think them through, but I think they're just some things that you just have to think about, before you make those decisions. So whether it's thoughts, perceptions, institutions that you go to, whatever can trigger your thoughts. We talked earlier about, like, the whole George Floyd thing. That sparked a movement. In my workplace, they even encouraged us to have a Black and ethnic minority, group, which supposedly was something that was already on the cards, but obviously because of what happened with George Floyd, that triggered something. So that's an example of things being moved forward based on your identity. Now, one might ask, okay, well, why weren't we given the opportunity to start that thing before the whole George Floyd thing? Those are all things that you have to ask questions about. Like, you can accept them. It's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but it's like when you look at your identity, it's just like, who's making the decisions that you're making? Who's making the decisions in the path that you're going? And are they the right? And are they the right ones for you? And that's why, just for me, it's just like ask questions and question everything. So I think I don't know if it was like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X who talked about being enlightened. How do you become enlightened? Do you walk the same path because everybody's walking on that same path? And also there's the religious illustration of people walking off the hill, everybody walking off the hill and everybody falling. It's like everybody's kind of like, well, I'm following him because he's walking in front, so that looks like the right way. So it's those little things. It's those little things. They're kind of like, it's just like when you get lost and you're in a group, you're going somewhere, and then you're trying to figure out where you should be going, and it's just like, no, Jamie's going that way, so we'll just follow Jamie. But is Jamie going in the right direction? Is he going to the place that you want to go? I'm just using Jamie as an example, by the way. I don't know anybody called Jamie. But it's just, so for me, it's always been ask questions and question everything. Because sometimes there are things like, I'm not trying to put my wife on a pedestal, but kind of. But she's like, she would do certain things, and I'll ask her, why are you doing it? And it's just like, and she would ask me the same question. So it's just those things. If we're doing things, we have to know, like, who we are. What's our identity? Our identity should determine the decisions that we make. And I like, as a Queenie Africa there, she's saying mentally and physically.
Yes. That was following on for her previous a comment earlier, which was the environment you live in has an effect on your health
Yeah,
mentally and physically. It's
yeah,
absolutely true. Totally, totally,
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
so yeah,
was it, did you, I think your earlier question was like, what
three.
things shape your future and stuff. So hopefully, I think I've answered that.
What is that? Three. Give free
Three,
giveaways, takeaways. You know,
okay.
nuggets. Three free. You know,
Yeah,
how?
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess another one I think is being involved in conversations. So finding people that think like you, or maybe things, or avenues where, you know, if you're enlightened, whatever that is, and you think, no, do you know what, I want to learn more about this, or you know, I'm from this background. How do I get, you know, my child to like Oxford or Cambridge, because nobody in my family ever got that, and I feel like my child has got that. It's those things. So you've got to sort of shift your mindset and put yourself into, you know, maybe if it's following certain accounts on Instagram or Facebook, or you know, that's like, say for example, you know, a group that's, you know, that's got, you know, kids that have uh, achieved a certain level of excellence in school, and you're trying to find other kids that are from the same background, and they want to, it's just those little small things, and I don't think that, you know, they're big, you know, like say for example, you got somebody like, I think like Stormzy pays for certain people that are doing well in school, and he helps them get to, like, I think it's like Cambridge or Oxford or something like that. But it's just like, how do I get on things like that? Because you could easily say, yeah, my kid's really smart, but then you don't do anything about it, because you're like, yeah, my kid's really smart, so that's a great thing. But how do I think differently in terms of maybe stopping something that's a perpetuated, um, you know, route that's always been part of my family. I want to break the
break,
cycle.
break
I want. Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just like,
Break cycle.
because of my identity, people think I shouldn't be able to attain this because I'm like this, and I'm like, well, no. Why should you think that way? You should think.
Outside
Obviously,
the
you're
box.
having those thoughts, then you're on the right path. So it's now
Mhm.
looking for certain avenues to help you do that. And I
Right.
think for me, I think that's key. And to give another
I,
example, it's just like, you know, a lot of, um, you know, say for example, I don't watch a lot of mainstream news. Well, I mean, that's not true. I watch some mainstream news, but I tend to watch all the sort of like, the Euro news, or South Korean news, or the Chinese channels, because they're they're painting a slightly different picture to a different news channel of where you're based. So it's like you've just got to open yourself up to, I think, different avenues that helps you sort of, you know, think differently. So I think those are my two. Those would be my two nuggets. And I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that I'm there, because I'm also still in the same boat. I'm still trying to, you know, um,
yeah.
you know, think
Walking
out
it
of the
out.
box, so to
Mm,
speak.
mm.
Yeah.
Your last point, I would kind of summarize that is like saying, you know, find your tribe. You know, connect with like-minded people. You know,
Yeah.
connect with those people who are going where you want to go,
Exactly.
or they're already there, or where it's where, or they're going in the same direction. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
that's really important as well. So just align yourself with people and things that are in line with your values, core values. All right, this is giving me a countdown, 25 seconds. So, you know, I was hoping that wasn't going to happen, but it's happened. It's here. Listen,
Oh wow.
Tendai, thank you so much for being my guest today. Guys, hit him up. I'm going to drop his tag at the bottom. Please hit him up, support and share. Thank you for everybody who was here today. It's been an absolute blessing. We will be
Thank you,
back with
guys.
another topic. Thank you so much, everyone.